Recently here on the channel I presented Iku as the force of death and the end of the life cycle in I. But to continue this story with more precision, it is worth making an important adjustment. Within this tradition, Iku is part of the Ajogun, a set of hostile forces linked to human suffering and ruin, and should not be treated as an orisha among orishas. And this changes the way we look at the subject. When most people think of the end, they immediately think of death. However, within this worldview, death rarely appears alone. Before it arrives, life can be struck in many ways, through the illness of the body, the loss of what sustains the home, conflicts that destroy relationships, situations of imprisonment, words cast to wound, blockages that stall the path, and sufferings that drag on until they consume a person's strength. The Ajogun represent precisely this set of forces that attack life before, during, and around the end. In other words, the Ajogun do not only talk about fear. They talk about the fragility of existence. Arun, disease. When we think of disease today, we usually think of a medical explanation: viruses, fever, infection, weakness, symptoms, and it makes sense. However, within a more ancient traditional reading, disease was not seen only as a problem of the body. It could also be understood as a sign of imbalance, vulnerability, or spiritual attack. When someone truly falls ill, it is not only the body that suffers, work, home, family, and hope also feel the impact. Arun represents this weakening that begins in the flesh but quickly spreads to the rest of life. Egba, paralysis. Egba is linked to paralysis. This can be understood literally but also in a broader sense. There are moments when a person remains alive, conscious, and wanting to act, but everything seems stuck. The body feels heavy, decisions do not happen, the path does not move, and life enters a state of blockage. Within this logic, Egba is not just the lack of physical movement, it is everything that interrupts progress and makes a person feel they have lost the ability to move forward. Ape, curse. Ape is linked to curses. And here it is worth thinking less about spectacular effects and more about the destructive weight of the word. Speech can wound, haunt, stain someone's name, and turn language into a weapon. Within this belief, ape helps explain situations where the word ceases to be mere communication and begins to carry hostility, destructive intent, and lasting consequences. It is speech used to strike another in a profound way. Essay, affliction. Essay is linked to affliction and persistent suffering. It is not a single, quick, and isolated blow, but the pain that stays, returns, or lingers. Instead of an instantaneous tragedy, what appears here is continuous wear and tear. The person gradually loses strength, spirit, stability, and even the sense of relief. Essay represents this suffering that settles in and shapes life through exhaustion. Ewon, imprisonment. Ewon is linked to imprisonment. On a direct level, this refers to captivity, containment, and the loss of freedom. But the idea also reaches situations where a person's life becomes trapped, surrounded, and without a way out. It can be a physical, social, or even existential imprisonment. The central point is the loss of autonomy. The person continues to exist, but can no longer live with real freedom. Ofo, loss. Ofo is linked to loss and the destruction of what sustains life. It is not just about losing objects, but about seeing what provides stability crumble: home, resources, work, security, and perspective. Material loss is almost never restricted to the material. When it enters, it also affects dignity, relationships, peace, and the future. Ofo represents precisely this experience of ruin that dismantles the foundation of existence. Oran, conflict. Oran is linked to conflict, crisis, and trouble. It points to that which breaks the peace between people, families, and communities. Conflict is not just a passing argument. In many cases, it becomes a permanent environment, contaminates decisions, erodes bonds, and turns coexistence into wear and tear. Oran represents this disturbance that enters relationships and makes crisis a constant condition. The strongest point in this idea is realizing that these forces do not need to act separately. In real life, ruin almost never comes all at once. Often it starts at one point and begins to spread. and illness can weaken the body and compromise work, sustenance, and the stability of the home. Material loss can create tension within the family. Conflict can break bonds, isolate people, and turn pain into a constant condition. When viewed this way, the Ajogun cease to seem like detached names and begin to form a map of human wear and tear. But this vision does not end in suffering. In Yoruba tradition, the Ajogun do not appear as forces against which the human being is completely helpless. There is also the idea of healing, protection, and the restoration of balance. In the face of disease, affliction, loss, or conflict, the response was not just fear, but also the search for spiritual guidance, proper rituals, and ways to push away whatever was disrupting life. Prayers, offerings, sacrifices, and ritual prescriptions, conducted by priests, diviners, and healers, were seen as means to contain these forces and restore balance. At the same time, living according to moral and spiritual principles was also understood as protection. In the end, the Ajogun represent the risk, but the tradition also affirms that there is defense, care, and resistance against it. Do not forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. See you on the next journey. Bye.